Recording in progress.
Namaskar. Recently, I have made a valuable addition to my personal library. It is the book titled The Gītā Mewari Miniature Paintings 1680 to 1698. It has been published by Niyogi Books, New Delhi. It is priced 1,495 rupees. The work has been edited by Alok Bhalla and Chandra Prakash Deval. Alok Bhalla is a well-known critic, poet and translator. He has been teaching in many Indian and overseas universities, and his contribution to the study of literature and art is well known. Chandra Prakash Deval is a celebrated poet of Rajasthani and Hindi. He is a Sahitya Akademi awardee and has published several collections of his poetry, and he is also a good translator. Has done lots of translations from Rajasthani into Hindi and from Hindi into Rajasthani. Both these editors have done marvelous work by producing this wonderful volume of miniature paintings on Srimad Bhagavad Gītā. They inform us that during their visits to Udaipur, they found that there are about 4,000 miniature paintings on the Mahabharata in 3 of the museums at Udaipur. Of these, 550 paintings belong to Srimad Bhagavad Gītā, depicting each and every verse of Gītā, the philosophical, esoteric, or spiritual meanings of the verse rendered through paintings. This is something a revelation in the area of Indian miniature painting. There are not many such works who render a philosophical text through the medium of painting. Earlier, I have delivered a lecture under my series of painting and Sanskrit literature, Sanskrit Sahitya mein Chitrakala. I have discussed a manuscript of Saundarya Lahari in which all the 100 verses of Saundarya Lahari by Shankaracharya are beautifully depicted with their esoteric and tantric meanings through miniature paintings. After this is another discovery for me and a wonderful thing to know that there was an Allah Baksh, and to me he is certainly one of the greatest miniature artists in the history of Indian painting. We know of some of the celebrated artists of miniature paintings during medieval period. In Mughal period, there was a Behzad, a celebrated painter. He was contemporary to Akbar or a senior contemporary. There is one Nansukh, of course, a later he comes later on. He is also very well known. But these painters from Rajasthan, and there are so many, and as Alok Bhalla and Chandra Prakash Deval inform us in their elaborate introduction to the volume, that we have to understand that there is a school of Mewar painting, of miniature art, and it has its own specific features. These paintings were created under the patronage of Maharana Jai Singh of Mewar in 17th century. It took around 20 years for Allah Baksh to complete this series of paintings on Srimad Bhagavad Gita, perhaps, as the dates are also given there. And Alok, Bhalla and Deval claim that this Mewar school should not be subsumed under the broad classification of Rajput paintings also, because these paintings are quite distinct from the paintings created at Bikaner, Kishangarh, Bundi or Jodhpur. The editors have also traced the development of Mewar school of painting. There was one Maharana Jagat Singh of Udaipur who commissioned the paintings based on the Ramayana. He engaged Sahibuddin and Manohar, these two artists, to create a unique version of Ramayana in the paintings on a very grand scale. And his endeavors yielded into more than 400 drawings. Then Maharana Pratap also, even during the days of his refuse, he gave the responsibility of painting the Ragmala series to one Nasaruddin. And there are other artists mentioned in this context. There is one Pyare Khan, father of Allah Baksh, the creator of Gītā series, Gītā in miniature paintings. And this Allah Baksh is perhaps the descendant of this Nasaruddin. The feature which distinguishes these paintings, these Mewar miniature paintings from the other schools, is that these paintings are inspired by the spiritual experience and by a search for the divine. In this way, the paintings of Allah Baksh are unique. Alok, Bhalla and Chandra Prakash Deval have taken care to include all the available paintings, almost all the available paintings. And Alok Bhalla has written a very elaborate, extensive commentary on each and every painting. That commentary is worth reading. This is the colophon which occurs at the end of the last verse in the second chapter. And on some of the pages, the paintings are printed in a small size, so it is difficult to read the Mewari letters inscribed at the top of each and every painting, which contain the Mewari translation, the Mewari rendering of the concerned verse. But here, the colophon says in the last lines, Iti Shri Shri Kisanarjuna Samvade Duti Adhyay Samapt Maharajadhiraj Maharana Shri Jai Singh Karitam But Kisan Dasa Likhitam. The name of the scriber is given, Bhatt Sri Krishna Das or Bhatt Kisan Das, as it is pronounced in Mewari or in the area. And Maharajadhiraj Maharana Shri Jai Singh is the patron. And in this way, we know the date and we know the name of the artist, of course. Allah Baksh is written, but he himself, in his signature, he writes his name as Allah Bagshah. This is his self-portrait, and it is the only portrait of the great painter from 17th century. And he must have been a great artist who could execute such an ambitious plan, rendering the whole Mahabharata in miniature paintings and then all the verses of Gītā with a sense of understanding the spirituality and the philosophy of each and every verse. So, the signature is given, Chitratan Chitaro, Allah Bagshah, Allah Bagsah. The Dantya Sakara, of course, is there so far as I can read. Although I have written the Talabya Shakara on the top of the slide. He has given his signature in good handwriting, and this is his self-portrait. Allah Bagsha, Allah Bagas, as he pronounces his own name. No other detail about such a great painter is available. But I am enamored by his paintings. After Saundarya Lahari, of course, the miniature paintings are there, but they do not give that experience because of perhaps the esotericism or the tantra involved. Here the message is very transparently given through paintings. Each and every painting, each and every verse of Gītā explored through beautiful painting. This is what Allah Baksh or Allah Bagasa, as he says his name, does for us. One thing which Alok Bhalla notices here is the portrayal of the chariot. And the chariot has been portrayed, has been depicted in all the 550 paintings, specifically and suggestively. And when we look at the chariot, the metaphor of chariot and the charioteer, as given in Kathopanishad, occurs to us. Atmanam rathinam viddhi, shariram rathamevacha, buddhim tu sarathim viddhi, vanah pragrahamevacha. Know thyself, yourself as the rathi. Your Atman is the rathi, the owner of this chariot. Shariram rathamevatu. This body is the chariot. Buddhim tu sarathim viddhi. The mind is the driver of the chariot, sarathi of the chariot. And manah pragrahamevacha. The intellect is the sarathi, driver of the charioteer of the chariot, and the mind forms the reins of the chariot. So the depiction of chariot here, it is very simple design. In other paintings, very, very intricate and minute, very subtle creations of the chariot with all the sorts of decors and minutest details Allah Baksh has given for us, and the depiction of horses also, who carry this chariot of the body. That also is to be noticed in these paintings. I will directly come to the depiction of the only verse from first chapter, as the editors inform that unfortunately only one painting from the first verse has survived. And they say that perhaps Allah Baksh had rendered all the verses of first chapter through his paintings. But I would not agree here, because there are more than 700 verses in Gītā, and the number of paintings, Gītā paintings, is 550, as they say. So Allah Baksh, by his discrimination, omitted some of the verses. And many verses from the first chapter he should have omitted. He ought to have omitted, because he is directly concerned with the message of Gītā. So he's not concerned what Dhritarashtra is asking, Dharmakshetre, Kurukshetre, Samveta, etc. And what Sanjay replies, and what Duryodhana says. Why should he paint this part of Gītā, the introductory part of Gītā? So perhaps he began with this verse, where we see Arjuna and Krishna directly coming into the picture. The 14th verse of the first chapter, Prathamadhyaye, Prathamaha Shlokaha. Tatah shveteyirhayeyiryukte mahati syandane sthitau madavah pandavaschaiva divyau shankhau pradadmatu. We can see the shells being blown by Krishna and Arjuna. And the colors he has chosen especially for this, because the conches or the shells are white. The horses are also very, very white. So the dark color has been chosen in the color scheme for Arjuna and Krishna. Krishna is, of course, Shyama Varna. There is beautiful canopy. And this chariot and so many spokes in the wheels of the chariot. We will come to the number of spokes, aras, of these wheels, which also is very symbolic. I would have loved to read the Mewari rendering. It is not exact translation, but it is very beautiful rendering of Gītā. The Mewari, as it would communicate to common men, each and every verse rendered into Mewari, and the dialect, how it captures the message of Gītā. That is the beauty of the painting and the Mewari rendering, both going together in this series. So each and every painting contains the Mewari rendering of the verse. Here it is not legible. I wish they could have given the large print so that these Mewari renderings could also be read together, because wherever I could read, I found that they are simply beautiful. They just capture the essence of the verse in a very simple language, which a common man would understand. The common man understanding Mewari would understand. So this is the first painting which with which Allah Baksh starts perhaps his series of Gītā, and he interprets each and every verse, elucidates and brings out the inherent meanings. I will cite Alok Bhalla here. Allah Baksh's works of visionary thoughtfulness deserve an honored place in the history of Indian miniature art and in the great library of Indian scriptures and their interpretations, quote unquote. He is the creator of a monumental treasure of paintings. He renders each and every painting the way it would exude intensity of spiritual experience. And he also displays a masterly reading of the body language in his depiction of these figures. In the first painting which has been displayed here, you may not notice the subtle details. When we proceed to the other paintings, we find that the way he is studying Arjuna and Krishna both, as the discourse goes on, how he understands Gītā. He must have been a scholar of Gītā. Otherwise, he won't have been able to create this subtle treasure of miniature paintings. So each and every figure has 3 levels. We will come to them. And even in this painting also, you can see that there are 3 levels. One level, the chariot, the horses, Krishna and Arjuna are there. Then there is another level, a strip, somewhat in blue. In other paintings, we can see distinctly 3 levels manifesting. And I find that the Adi Bhautik, Adi Devik, and Adhyatmik worlds, the empirical, the mental or imaginary, and the spiritual, these worlds, they come together in many of the paintings. And what we find in these paintings is that Allah Baksh deliberately keeps all his portraits free from the crowd, the commotion, the violence, and the horrors of war, the horrors of great Mahabharata war. Because Gītā to Allah Baksh is a discourse between the spiritual master and his disciple. Of course, he does present some of the warriors. Somewhere in 2 or 3 paintings, Duryodhana confronts this duo, Krishna and Arjuna, but they hardly take any notice. They are engaged in their discourse. Bhishma and Drona are also portrayed in one painting. In other paintings, Allah Baksh has created an environment, the whole ecosystem, the Panch Mahabhutas, the flora and fauna also, and some imaginary characters somewhere, some pandits, some king. He brings in at one level. At second level, Krishna and Arjuna are engaged in their discourse. And there is a third level where Hanumana on the top of the flag of Arjuna is watching everything, and then some yogi, some spiritual master, somebody is there. So every painting is an interpretation by Allah Baksh. Allah Baksh. As Bhalla and Deval writes his name in Roman. So he weaves a narrative of survival and supremacy of human wisdom. I would again read the comments from the introduction by Alok Bhalla. The philosophic urge of the Gītā is to postpone war as long as possible. The tragedy of Gītā is that it is helpless to avert it. The greatness of Gītā is that human beings continue to meditate upon the dialogue between God and man about what is good and how it can be sustained. One of the most beautiful interpretations of the essence of Gītā to me. And in this way, the whole series of painting to me is a series on recovery of faith. Recovery of faith in the times of Allah Baksh, and these paintings are so contemporary that they become the text for recovery of faith in our age as well. The features and personality of Arjuna and Krishna, of course, follow the tenets of Mewari school of painting. Allah Baksh has invested them with a sense of compulsion, serenity, and depth of meaning. At the first glance, it appears that their faces, the faces of Krishna and Arjuna, they are all alike. But then, when we read the paintings, we notice the subtleties. We find that there are differences. And the stances, the postures, the expressions on the faces of both Arjuna and Krishna, they change from painting to painting. About the size of the paintings, as the editors inform us, they are fairly large size, approximately 37 by 24 centimeters. That means a full-scale page, and or larger than that. All of them are made in portrait shape. This is also remarkable. He has chosen the portrait shape, not the landscape shape. So by choosing that portrait shape, Allah Baksh can concentrate on the protagonist, Arjuna, and his spiritual master in a more focused way. He studies the faces of Krishna and Arjuna both through his portraits. I will now go to the second verse, and before that, I will again read a comment by Alok Bhalla as he notices the expressions of Arjuna when he starts speaking in the paintings. He says, the slow, deep sounding cadence of pity in Arjuna's words, so full of genuine sorrow for the fate that awaits the earth and a profound desire not to cause it harm, defies the ethic of Allah Baksh's paintings. This is very remarkable and a good study of the painting, the perspective of the artist. Allah Baksh interprets Gītā through these paintings as a text with a message of non-violence and compassion. And that way he comes very close to Mahatma Gandhi. And Alok Bhalla would also understand him, understand Allah Baksh and both Allah Baksh and Mahatma Gandhi that way. So they have tried to reveal the mystery of Gītā and how Gītā is a text delivering the message of compassion and non-violence. Coming to the second verse from the second chapter. Kutastva kashmalvidam vishame samupastitam anarya jushtam aswargyam akirtikaram Arjuna. I would like to read the Mewari translation, rendering, of course. It is free rendering. Sometimes it is very cryptic and brief and directly captures the essence of the verse. श्री कृष्ण अर्जुन सु कहे हैं ईसा विषम समय माहे सो संदेह थाहे क्यों हुओ यो संदेह छोटा मानसा है के इति संदेह थी स्वर्ग ने कीर्ति न थे. And the way Allah Baksh portrays Krishna reprimanding Arjuna, and the way Arjuna is sitting at a distance, he understand the line rathopasth upavishat. Arjuna cast aside his bow and arrow and sat in the rear part of the chariot and look at the posture of Arjuna, the way his right arm is grabbing his left arm in a pose of withdrawal, and Krishna almost reprimanding him. How comes this spirit of desolation occurs to you? As I said, that there are three levels. At the bottom, we see there is a spiritual master and a disciple. They are mirror images of Krishna and Arjuna. The robes have changed. Krishna is wearing white robes here, and disciple Arjuna is wearing saffron color garment, and the discourse is going on at one level. This is one level, and the discourse starts here at the second level, which is the level of the battlefield, the field of mental agony, of trauma being faced by Arjuna. And here Duryodhana, of course, is also portrayed. He is confronting Arjuna and is looking ahead. He is ready to march. He is not concerned that there is a master and the disciple. They are just going to start a great spiritual discourse. He is almost on a crusade or march for the war. And on the third level, this is strip, white, somewhat dark blue patches and white. This is there. And over and above that, Krishan Das has written the Mewari rendering, which fortunately for this verse I could read. So this, including the Mewari rendering, which is inscribed on each and every painting, there are 4 levels, but the painting, each and every painting itself forms 3 levels, runs on 3 levels. And this is Allah Baksha's interpretative design of rendering Gītā through paintings. Here also you can see the horses, the way the horses are standing, as if the reins have been drawn and they have been asked to stop. And there is a kind of stalemate. And the way Krishna is admonishing Arjuna. This is the flag of Arjuna, and on the top of this flag, this is Hanumana. And of course, he looks here so small, but if when the paintings are printed in large size, we can notice several postures of Hanumana. Sometimes he is looking at the enemy side ahead. Sometimes he is looking towards the Pandava army, and sometimes he is looking beyond. This was the second verse. And beautifully captured the mood of desolence, sorrow, which has occurred to Arjuna. And Arjuna and Krishna sitting together, but in sharp contrast to each other. There is a radiant Krishna and a disciple withdrawn, expressing his mental anguish. He is in the mood of utter dejection. And Duryodhana confronts them. He sits upright with an arrogance, looking ahead, quite confident of himself. About the translation, I could have discussed the translation of the translation of the translation, because Chandra Prakash Deval has translated the Mewari rendering in Hindi, and Alok Bhalla has translated it in English. They are also worth reading. And there are subtle differences in the 3. The Mewari rendering, then Deval's translation of that, and again then Bhalla's translation of the Hindi translation of Mewari in English. The differences are, of course, have to be. And the interpretative design of these 3. I couldn't see the name of the translator. Perhaps Allah Baksh himself has done the Mewari rendering. He seems to be a scholar. And Deval and Bhalla have also their own perspective that has crept in their translations. But it is an experience, quite an experience to read all the 3 together. It is not moving away from the truth of Gītā by these translations. It is not thrice removal from the truth of Gītā. We come closer to the truth of Gītā. The way successively they march ahead in the discovery of the message of Gītā. Because in the translation, श्री किशन अर्जुन सो कहे हैं ईसा विषम समय माहे सो संदेह था है क्यों हुओ यो संदेह छोटा मानसा है के देवल translated तुझे इस असमय में यह मोह किस हेतु से हुआ. He has replaced the word संदेह by the word मोह in Hindi. And Bhalla says, Sri Krishna says to Arjuna, why are you dejected at this moment of crisis? Only the weak are dejected. Despondency neither leads to heaven nor brings fame. So the Krishna's chastising words have become more sophisticated in Bhalla's rendering. They are very outspoken in the Mewari rendering. Everywhere I find that the Mewari rendering is outspoken, very direct, perceptive, and transparent. There is no polish because it is for the folk, for the common people to understand. And the Rajputs are addressing each other perhaps through that. Coming to the third verse of the second chapter, because there are other paintings. We can talk about each and every painting for hours. Such is the beauty. Here in the third verse, Klebyam masma gama partha naitat tvai upapadyate. Kshudram hridaya dorbalyam yakto tishta parantapa. And what the Mewari translator has done, Klebyam masma gama, he directly translates it, Hey Arjun namardai chod. And if you go to the Hindi rendering and the English translation, they are of course a little bit sophisticated. Polished language is there. But coming to the interpretation of Allah Baksh, here the postures of Krishna and Arjuna both has changed. From the first painting which we saw, Arjuna of course is sitting on the same way, his right hand is touching his left arm. But if you see that these harsh words, this the way Sri Krishna reprimands him, it has aroused Arjuna. So he has picked up his bow by his left hand. And Sri Krishna has come a bit closer to him, reprimanding him. And at the bottom, there is a warrior from Pandava army, some soldier from infantry battalion, holding a sword. He's looking back, marching ahead and looking back. This is the beauty. Perhaps he's asking why the army is not marching ahead when the Kauravas are marching towards us. Why we are not marching? Why this stalemate? Perhaps this question is there. And these Kauravas now are there. Besides Duryodhana, other warriors have joined. There is a Mahat driving an elephant. And you see the Ankusha through which he is goading the elephant, is also depicted, and the elephant is agitated. It is somewhat marching ahead in an angry mood, the way it has been depicted. And other warriors are also there. They have joined the Kauravas and they are moving ahead. But Krishna and Arjuna, they are not noticing. So this bottom level, where one single warrior from Pandava army, then this level of the battlefield, where Kauravas are confronting the Pandava army, but in a corner over here, Krishna and Arjuna are going to start their discussion. And here is Hanumana sitting on the top of the flag. He is seeing perhaps the Kaurava army. There is the third level, painted in somewhat grey. And there is a yogi who is sailing in the sky. This is the third level. What Allah Baksha is trying to suggest can be discussed in detail. This is to be done by those who view these paintings. And I want to devote time for each and every painting that way. Coming to the fourth verse of second chapter. This is the fourth verse. More warriors have joined the Kaurava army. They have come closer to this duo, which is still is engaged in their intense discussion. Arjuna has changed his posture, and Sri Krishna, with his same radiance and attitude of a rebuke for Krishna, a rebuke for Arjuna, is seeing him eye to eye, but Arjuna is unable to see him eye to eye. He is still withdrawn, but his posture is changed. He looks a bit more attentive to Sri Krishna. He wants now to listen to Sri Krishna, what he has to say to me. This is we find in this painting. The verse is Katham Bhishmaham Sankhye Dronam Cha Madhusudana Ishubhi Pratiyotsyami Pujarha Vari Sudana. The Mewari rendering says, Sangram Mahe Bhisam hai, Dron hai, Baan kare mein kyun ladu? Ye to pujwano yogya hai. So this is the Mewari rendering and the painting of Allah Baksha. Coming to the 6th verse from the 2nd chapter. I think this should be the 6th verse. न चैतद विद्मः कतरन्नो गरीयो यद्वा जयेम यदि वानो जयेयु यानेव हत्वा न जिजीविषामस्ते तेव स्थिताः प्रमुखे धार्त राष्ट्राः. Arjuna is now expressing his doubts, his apprehensions, and his mental agony. So his posture has changed, and the direction of the chariot has also changed. This is very significant. In the earlier paintings, 3 paintings which we have seen, both Arjuna and Krishna are seeing towards west. They are facing west. Now the direction is altogether changed. They are facing the east. And you see the horses, they are a bit restive. And one of the horses has raised one of his feet. And of course, Hanumana is also there. He is looking towards the rival army. And when Arjuna is asking how I will fight Bhishma and Drona and my brethren of Kaurva army, the Kauravas have already started marching towards the Pandavas. And we see how they have outnumbered the Pandavas. Only 2 soldiers from the Pandava army. They are painted, their bodies, the upper parts of their body are painted in blue. These 2 soldiers from the Pandava army, and they are being confronted by the 4 soldiers from the Kaurava army. And their garments, their postures, their angry mood, all this is depicted. The way the Kauravas are eyeing angrily the soldiers from the Pandava army. While the Pandava soldiers, they are a bit subdued. They are ready to fight, but they are not agitated. So in every level, at every level, Allah Baksh has an interpretive design. What the Pandava side stands for patience and wisdom. And the Kaurava side, anger, greed, and impatience. This is what Allah Baksh perhaps is trying to suggest at the bottom level. At the 2nd level, now Arjuna has already started giving vent to his grievances, his doubts, his apprehension. He has folded his hands. He accepts Krishna as his spiritual master. Krishna has also now appeared in the role of his master. He is ready to preach him. And then there is this 3rd level, a kind of spiritual experience through this gray and white background. And over and above that, this Mewari rendering is also there of the verse. So this perhaps was the 6th verse. And in the 6th verse and in some other paintings also on the other verses, the wheels, the spokes of the wheel, there are 16 spokes in the wheels. This is also very symbolic, because the Brahmana texts say that the Purusha has 16 kalas. Krishna is also a Purna Kala Purush, he has 16 kalas. So the spokes of the wheel, they have 16 kalas. Arjuna is still caught in a sort of existential question, to fight or not to fight. And there are subtle differences between the Mewari, Hindi, and English translations, which I would not discuss here. It is in itself, it's a lively topic for discussions. How these translations, beautiful translations, of course, they are, but their perception a bit changes. Coming to the 7th verse from the 2nd chapter. कार्पण्य दोषोपहत स्वभाव पृच्छामि त्वां धर्म सम्मूढ़ चेता यच्छ्रेयस्या निश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यस्तेहं शाधि मां त्वां प्रपन्नम. Now there is a difference. Arjuna has moved a bit closer to Krishna because he says that I am your disciple now. I leave it to you. You tell me what to do. I am your disciple. You preach me. So the distance is narrowed. In other paintings, Arjuna is withdrawn and he's sitting a little bit. He's sitting apart from Krishna, at a distance from Krishna. But here he has moved closer. And the chariot also, the design of the chariot has also changed. The chariot doesn't remain the same everywhere because chariot is symbolic. So the body is changing with the spiritual message being delivered. Here the spokes, the number of spokes you can count. And the posture of Hanumana has changed over and above this flag. Hanumana is looking in other direction. His tail, of course, is here, and one of his hands is stretched in the other direction, in the opposite direction. And Krishna and Arjuna, they are facing each other. Krishna has turned his face towards Arjuna in the opposite direction of the chariot. At the bottom level, there are again mirror images. And in a very discreet way, Arjuna is here standing before Krishna as a disciple with folded hands. Samit Pani Shrotriyam Brahmanishtam, like that. He has approached his spiritual master with folded hands. And Krishna is sitting in all his glory. So these 3 levels again are here in this painting. This was the 7th verse of the 2nd chapter. We come to the 8th verse of the 2nd chapter. 8th verse is not there, perhaps. This is 11th verse. The painting on the 8th verse is also very beautiful. Perhaps it has been omitted. And it is very colorful, and the background at the bottom, the figures at the bottom of the painting, they are very significant characters are there. So in the painting on the 11th chapter, there are also there are 3 words. The pragmatic world or the Vyavahar Jagat, it is below. The second level, the scene of battle where Arjuna is battling with his own apprehensions and his mental agony. And he is being brought to senses by his spiritual master. And there is a third level over and above that. There is a yogi sitting on the wooden platform with a white parasol. No, this is some other painting. Yes, yes. Oh, I was mentioning this eighth verse. I just read out the description of the eighth verse. Here, a king and his servant ready to obey his orders. They are at the bottom, and the background, the platform on which they are sitting, is painted in saffron color. Then the second level, Krishna listening to Arjuna. Arjuna is giving vent to his apprehensions and his doubts. And there is this third level where a yogi is sitting. There is a canopy over his head, chhatra, and he is sitting on a wooden platform. And both the yogi and Hanumana, they are almost on the same level. Or Hanumana is a bit higher than the yogi himself. He's sitting on the flag of Krishna, the flag of Arjuna. So this was actually the eighth verse. And 11th verse, it has four figures at the bottom. And the fifth one, lying on the ground. This is the Vyavahar Jagat. Pandit reading, holding a text and discussing or preaching an obedient disciple who must be a prince, and a servant is standing there, perhaps ready to obey the orders, and these two figures. So the Vyavahar Jagat, the business in the Vyavahar Jagat, this business is going on. The discussion between Arjuna and Krishna has become more intense, and Krishna is now ready to start his sermon, one of the great philosophical and spiritual discourses. So Arjuna is now in a more attentive mood, as you see his eyes, his face, and his hands, his folded hands. And Krishna has also come a bit closer to him, ready to deliver his discourse. This is the 11th verse. And the 12th verse says, Natvevaham jatu nasam. Natvime naradhipah. The Mewari rendering, one cryptic sentence, न तो हूं न कई थे, न त्वेवाहम जातु नासम, न त्वम नेमे जनाधिपा, न चैव न भविष्यामः सर्वे वयमतः परम. There was never a time when I did not exist, when you and those princes did not exist, nor shall we cease to exist in future. This is Bhalla's translation from the Deval's rendering. And there are four persons sitting on the ground. The ground is painted in sparkling white. Two of them are Arjuna and Krishna. Arjuna is pointing out to one of the two persons facing them. Alok Bhalla suggests that they may be Dhritarashtra and Sanjay, but I don't think Dhritarashtra and Sanjay would sit that way on the ground side by side. Dhritarashtra is a Samrat, and Sanjay telling him about the happenings of each and every day. The old person of these two seems to be intently looking at Arjuna. Since Krishna is describing Janadhipas, the kings who existed in the yore, in the ages that have gone, and the kings who will exist in the coming ages, these two may be the portrayals of such kings. There is an uneven brick red background for Arjuna and Krishna here. And then there is a background painted in blue. And over and above this, there is a white strip. And there are marble-like statues shining out in a frieze. Here Allah Baksh also shows a slight variation in the postures of the horses and the chariot. As I said, one of them has just raised a foot. Allah Baksh has taken utmost care of the minutest designs of the saddle, halter, and the bridle of these horses, as well as the very carvings and the decors on the chariot. The color schemes also differ from painting to painting for the chariot, and all the designs also differ. This was the 12th verse from the second chapter. And you see, this is some king who is intently looking at these mirror images of Krishna and Arjuna. And the person sitting beside him is also looking towards them. And Arjuna is pointing out to them. So perhaps Krishna, by his raised index finger, is telling about the kings of yore and the kings who would come in the subsequent ages. And the kings of yore and the kings of subsequent ages are seeing Krishna and Arjuna. Something like that Allah Baksh wants to suggest. And then the second level and the third level, over and above that. And the posture of Hanumana, as I said, has changed here. Coming to the 14th verse of the second chapter. Here again, 3 levels are explicitly displayed, and there is a marvelous design of the flora. There is a tree. There is a spiritual master sitting below the tree, the disciple sitting facing him. And the second level, now Sri Krishna and Arjuna, they have come even closer to each other. And the intensity of the discussion has reached another level. So they are lost in each other. So there are no warriors, nothing beyond Krishna and Arjuna here. And this level, and over and above them, this level is there where this shining star or sun is there in the big gray background of the sky and the white strip below that. This was the 14th verse. The Mewari translation of the 14th verse. Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkhadah agma paino anityastans titikshassu bharata. So the translator or the person who wrote the Mewari rendering, मात्रा सपर सादिक शीत उसन सुख दुख देहे के हैं हे ने जाए हैं इणाहे छोड़ो. So the way the folk in Mewar would speak in a simple way, and they would convey the message of Gītā, and they would capture the beauty also in their language. In this painting, the tree with yellow leaves is there, and a sage is sitting on a white platform. He is wearing the sacred thread, Yagyopavita. He is preaching a person who is facing him, and he is perhaps a prince who is trying to learn wisdom from him. The fire is burning behind the man, and a bush is there. So the imagination and creativity in each and every painting is there, and the design, subtle designs of Allah Baksha are there in each and every painting. Coming to the 15th verse of the second chapter. Yam hina vyathyantete purusham purusharshava samadukha sukham dhiram so amritatvaya kalpate. How subtly Allah Baksh has understood the messages and how he portrays. Coming to the 15th verse. Because he portrays a person who would rise to the level of Amritattva, a kind of yogi. And this beautiful tree, green tree, and a fire burning behind. And then Krishna, in a more pleasant way, trying to convince Arjuna. And Arjuna is looking at him, trying to understand his message. This is the. And the portrait of Hanumana is also changed a bit. He is perhaps observing the world below, what is going on in the world below. And he lives in this third level of spirituality. So this is 15th verse. And coming to the 16th verse, Nasato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate satah, ubhayorapi drashtontas tvanayos tattva darshibhihi. This is the 16th. There is an esoteric design in the painting. And to represent that, Allah Baksh has portrayed this background, the trees. There are two persons. They are engaged in some spiritual discussion. There is a bhrangara placed on the side of the first person. The first person is holding some script, and he is giving a discourse to this person, and this person, an obedient servant, he is sitting behind. So this is one. And the postures of Krishna and Arjuna also have changed a little. Arjuna is a bit reassured, and Krishna is also in a pleasant mood. And now the discussion is proceeding. And Hanumana, on the top of the flag, he is looking in the other direction. And there is this bright, some star-like thing which is shining behind Sri Krishna. So this was the second. This was the 16th painting. Coming to the 18th verse of the second chapter. You see, 6 persons are portrayed. And again, Pandits or spiritual masters engaged in some discussion. Some princes or kings, they are also engaged in discussion. And Krishna and Arjuna, they are having their discussion at the second level. The third level has come a bit, has descended a bit. It has come over the aura of Krishna. So as if the spiritually is descending, and Hanumana has risen over and above that. This is what Allah Baksh depicts through this 18th verse. Each and every verse is interpreted this way. This is the 53rd verse of second chapter. The yogi in his meditation, lost in his meditation, is there at one level. The chariot, the design of the chariot has changed. The design of the flag has changed. The posture of Hanumana has changed. The stance of the horses has changed a little bit. And only one wheel is visible, and number of spokes is also significant. And Krishna and Arjuna, they are drawn closer to each other. And Arjuna is more attentive. And Krishna is pleased to sermonize him. 53rd verse, it says, Shruti vipratipanna yata yada sthasyati nishchala samadhav vachala buddhis tada yogam avapsyasi. So how to acquire the wisdom, achala buddhi, and how to be a yogin. This is what Krishna is telling in this 53rd verse. Coming to the 54th verse, Sthita pragyasya ka bhasha samadhisthasya keshava sthita dhi kim prabhasheta kimasita vrajeta kim. It is the discussion on Sthita pragya. At the bottom, maybe this Sthita pragya is there and his disciple listening to him, and some other business is going on in the other world. It is the pragmatic world or Vyavahar Jagata. And Krishna and Arjuna, they are engaged in discussion, and Krishna is talking about the Sthita Pragya. The stance of the horses has also changed a little. One foot raised a little bit, and the rear foot also moved forward. And the color or the design of the flag has changed. The posture of Hanumana has changed. He is almost stooping and perhaps lost in a reverie or in some thought. And this spiritual background over and above is there in the 54th verse painting. Coming to the next verse, which is 56th. Dukkheshu anudignamana sukheshu vigataspраha Pitaraga bhayakrodha sthita dhir muni ruchyate. The sthita pragya or sthita dhi muni is defined, and Allah Baksh has in the bottom portrait 4 figures who have that wisdom perhaps. Each one is holding a scripture, and they are talking or seeing each other as if they understand each other fully. Some sthita pragya munis, and 4 persons, 4 bhrangaras are there for each one. So they perhaps are they are elevated souls. And at the second level, Krishna and Arjuna in the same way. Arjuna is more convinced, appears more convinced now. His expression slowly changing. And in the same way, Hanumana on the top is there. So in all the paintings, you can see there is some specific design. This is 57th verse. The posture of Hanumana, just to see how it changes. And Sri Krishna and Arjuna, their postures have changed in the painting on the 57th verse. Yah sarvatra navisnehas tattat prapya shubhashubham navinandati nadveshti tasya pragya pratishtita. It is the discussion on the pratishtha of pragya, how the pragya of wisdom that is acquired is stabilized in an individual. So the representation of pragya perhaps is here in the form of a Devi, and these sthita pragyas, they are discussing something with each other, 2 persons here. And Krishna and Arjuna. In each and every painting, the robes, the facial expressions, the eyes of Arjuna and Krishna, there are slight variations, and there are obviously the creative imagination working of the painter. Coming to the 53rd verse, there is a background and birds, other animals are there. The yogi who has withdrawn from all these, he is there, and over and above them, Krishna and Arjuna, they are there. The 58th verse, Yada samharate chayam, kurmo anganiva sarvashah, indriyani indriyarthebhyas, tasya pragya pratishtita. Because the verse talks of a tortoise, and the tortoise is there in the pond. He has shrunken his organs. That is depicted in the painting, and the birds standing on the bank of the pond, they are also depicted. And the yogi who has withdrawn from all this world, he is also depicted. This is the tortoise. He is shrinking his organs, and the birds standing side by side to him. So this was the 53rd verse. The 59th verse, the painting is beautiful, and again the whole design has been changed as per the requirement of the thematic contents. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasvarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. How a yogi is elevated. This is what Krishna is saying. And he is withdrawn from the Jagat Prapancha. So he portrays a yogi, elevated yogi in the bottom level, and the prinsa standing before him obediently. And the whole depiction of the chariot, Krishna and Arjuna, has also subtly changed. The whole aura of Krishna also. And how these variations bring out the inherent content of the verse. This is what Allah Baksh is doing. This is the 60th verse from the second verse. Yatato yapi konteya purushasya vipaschita indriyani pramathini haranti prasabham mana. So the sense organs, they are so tempting, and they dissuade a person, they mislead him. So this is the Kamadeva holding an arrow. Pushpa is there, Pushpabana is there perhaps, and he is sitting on a tree. So Allah Baksh has perhaps studied so many stories about Kamadeva, and it's beautiful background for the Kamadeva, creating his Leela, his beauty, and the yogi is sitting uninfluenced by all the Leela, all the sportive activities of the Kamadeva. This is what perhaps Allah Baksha is trying to depict over here. And this whole background, the carpet-like design, has been created beautifully. The birds are there, and Krishna and Arjuna. Krishna is more convincing, and Arjuna is more understanding, perhaps. From their posture, we can say this. And coming to the 61st verse of second chapter. There is a cow, a woman, and a knowledgeable person sitting face to face her, and there is another knowledgeable person sitting besides. And Krishna and Arjuna, the postures have again changed. The facial expression of Krishna, there is a change. And in the same way, in the face of Arjuna also, there is a change. We now come to 7th chapter. Each and every verse is painted this way, and these paintings are to be studied at length. The 3rd verse from the 7th chapter. Manusyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye. Yatataamapi siddhanam kaschin mam veti tatvatah. The Mewari rendering says, Sri Krishna Arjun su kahe hain, koi ek siddh re vaste jatan करे hai, जतन करत के तत्व जतन करत सिद्ध माहे कोई एक तत्व थी मोहे जाने हैं. Simple and good rendering, and some real yogi who makes real efforts can only achieve and understand the reality. And Krishna and Arjuna is sitting completely in a supplicated mood, attentively listening to Krishna. And at the bottom level, so many siddhas are portrayed. 8 siddhas, of course, are portrayed. And they are trying to achieve, they are trying to understand the supreme reality, perhaps, which is being spoken of by Krishna here. And the 3rd level is also painted in a more serene way. And the white strips mixed with gray linings. So this was the 3rd verse of 7th chapter. One more painting from the 8th chapter. Here again, 4 persons are sitting in the background, and the verse says, Ati yagya katham kotra dehasmin madhusudana prayana kale che katham geyosi niyatatmabhi. How to know you when there is the last moment of our life. And this is the question by Krishna. And these persons, you see, who are trying to understand the last moment of their life, they are there. 4 persons are sitting. And the whole design of the 2nd level and the 3rd level is also significantly changed over here. And the direction again has changed. The direction of the chariot. And again, the chariot is facing westward, west side. And Arjuna is now depicted in a more confident mood. He's listening to Krishna. And this last strip over and above with Hanumana in it, the color of this strip has also changed. I will display this 14th verse on the 10th of the 10th chapter. Nantos timam divyanam vibhutinam parantapa esha tudeshatah prokta prokto vibhuter vistaro maya. Mewari translation says, Sri Krishna Arjun su kahe hain, jathe jathe vibhuti ghani hai, tathe tathe hu chu. Beautifully summarized. And now Krishna is describing his vibhutis. It is vibhuti yoga. And the vibhutis, of course, some of them are over here at the bottom level. And Krishna and Arjuna, and the glow of Krishna, there is a change. And there is a change in the facial expression of Arjuna also. And this cone-like shape is painted. The color of the flag has changed. And the 3rd level, which represents the spirituality, has almost mixed in the 2nd level. This is what Allah Baksh has done here. Coming to the Vishwarup Darshana. Allah Baksh understand that it is next to impossible to present the Vishwarup in a miniature painting. Here he has shown Arjuna how pygmy he looks himself, and his Lord Krishna with the multifaceted body, so many hands, and Aneka Vaktram, Aneka Bahu, Dharvaktra Netram, etc. He has tried to depict so many paintings on the Vishwarupa. On each and every verse, this is 11:10, 11:11, 11:12, 11:26, where the sons of Dhatarashtra are entering in the mouths of Vishwarup, Virat Roop. The Virat is devouring all the beings of the world. So this has been depicted. So I just have tried to give a sort of rough idea and a glimpse of these paintings and this work which has been brought out so meticulously after a lot of hard labor by the editors Alok, Bhalla and Chandra Prakash Deval is a valuable contribution to the study of Indian miniature paintings and to the study of Gītā especially, because I'm drawn back to Gītā. And in my childhood, I learned the whole Gītā. I had memorized the whole Gītā. I could deliver sermons on Gītā in my boyhood days. After that, I moved into another discussion. Looking at these paintings, I felt that Gītā is coming back to me. This is what Allah Baksh has done for the present day humanity. Bhalla says that these images of Allah Baksh are not literal correlatives of what the verses say. They are in keeping with the universal message of Gītā and the Mahabharata. And as Bhalla understands the message of Gītā, as Gandhi understands, and as perhaps Allah Baksh is also trying to communicate through these paintings, the message is that the war is to be fought when there is no other course left open. Bhalla writes, war must wait till reason finally understands that violence is the only option for justice. So, Alok Bhalla here emerges as a Bhashyakara for these paintings. And reading his commentary on all these paintings, beautifully interpreted by him. Why Allah Baksh doesn't depict the Vishwarup in a terrific mood, the way Arjuna describes it. You look so terrific, you look so fierce, because Allah Baksh understand the whole message of Mahabharata as a message for peace. The whole epic is an epic of Shantarasa. So he is portraying all the paintings in a serene way. The fierceness, the horror of war is all removed so that the message of peace can be communicated. But the commentary of Alok Bhalla on these paintings is worth reading. We feel the poetry of the painting flowing to us. It is quite an experience to read the commentary. And Alok Bhalla is, of course, an outsider to the world of Sanskrit learning. But being a man gifted with critical insight, he sometimes points out to some subtle things which escape the notice of those who are steeped in traditional learning even. Here also he makes very significant remark with reference to the whole series of Allah Baksh and Gītā. Arjuna is listening to the discourse of Gita, and at the same time, Dhritarashtra is also listening to the whole discourse as reported to him by Sanjaya. So this is something very interesting, which Alok Bhalla points out. Dhritarashtra doesn't make any remark on the revelation of one of the greatest philosophical and spiritual discourses, which was occasioned at the very outset of the Great War. So the message of Gita is not for the Dhritarashtra. It is for Arjuna. So Allah Baksh doesn't depict Dhritarashtra, I think. He is out of picture. Sanjay and Dhritarashtra, they are not concerned with the message of Gita. Sanjay is simply a reporter, and Dhritarashtra is concerned with the victory of his sons. And he hardly understands that something great has happened at the outset of the war. So with this, I close this discussion on the miniature paintings of Allah Baksh through this wonderful publication, the Gītā, Mewari miniature paintings, 1680 to 1698. Almost 18 years that Allah Baksh might have spent on creating these paintings. Thank you very much.